Hey there, it is Wednesday, April 15th, 2020. I've been gone for a few days because things were just getting a bit too heavy, and I wanted a few days off of news and politics. Turns out, news and politics did not take a few days off for me. Shocker. So, I want to look at just a few stories related to something that broke at the end of last week. Namely that Google and Apple are working together on developing a way for our phones to track our locations and alert us if we've been sharing a space with anyone who's been infected with the coronavirus. In the few days I took off, I should have improved the sound quality on these videos, so hopefully you don't hear that background noise, hissing, whistling type stuff as much. And also, I figured out how to display my screen and myself at the same time. So let's use that feature and get right into it. First, Edward Snowden did an interview with Vice last week, and Snowden warns governments are using coronavirus to build the architecture of oppression. And so the full interview is available now. I just want to read one quote here. Vice asked, "It seems that coronavirus may be the greatest question of the modern era around civil liberties, around the right to privacy. Yet no one's asking this question." And even Vice didn't actually ask a question, but Edward Snowden responds nonetheless. "As authoritarianism spreads, as emergency laws proliferate, as we sacrifice our rights, we also sacrifice our capability to arrest the sly into a less liberal and less free world. Do you truly believe that when the first wave, this second wave, the 16th wave of the coronavirus is a long forgotten memory, that these capabilities will not be kept? That these data sets will not be kept? No matter how it is being used, what is being built is the architecture of oppression." And I would just like to keep that in mind while delving into a little bit more of the details of what's happening. So on Saturday morning, The Verge published a really good piece, thoroughly sourced, and lots of links to the technical data within. The piece is called "Answering the 12 Biggest Questions About Apple and Google's New Coronavirus Tracking Project." I want to start right here. Question. So, it's an app. Sort of. In the first part of the project, aimed to be finished by mid-May, a month from now, the system will be built into official public health apps, which will send out the BLE signals in the background, and that is a type of Bluetooth, which is discussed earlier in the article. Actually, I want to make a point of this right now. While my biggest concern is privacy and security and surveillance, this will be using Bluetooth Low Energy, which means it won't drain your battery quite as noticeably. I don't know about you, but in my experience with Bluetooth, that stuff just siphons battery life. So to have people have this feature on all day, people's phones are not going to last throughout the afternoon. So that's definitely a concern, but not the one I'm going to dive into right now. And now back to where I interrupted myself. Those apps will be built by state-level health agencies, not tech companies, which means the agencies will be in charge of a lot of important decisions about how to notify users and what to recommend if a person has been exposed. Eventually, the team hopes to build that functionality directly into the iOS and Android operating systems, similar to a native dashboard or a toggle in the settings menu. But that will take months, and it will still prompt users to download an official public health app if they need to submit information or receive an alert. State-level health agencies. So now we're looking at a bit of a cluster, aren't we? We have Apple and Google, two gigantic private companies working together, but also counting on the state level government or health agencies to actually design these apps on the fly as we go, while they are currently already overloaded with the worst crisis in our generation? That seems like a tall ask. And something where security is going to be a huge concern. This is very private data. Are we really going to want to rush people through this and rush it out? Well, on this time scale, they're talking about a few months already, and here we're in thick of the first wave of coronavirus. So yeah, they're probably going to be rushing. Now we get into, and I'll leave a lot of this to you because it's a very good article, but some good questions here with some honest answers, it seems. Question, is this really secure? Answer, mostly, it seems like the answer is yes. So I take that as a no. Is this really secure? Mostly. What you mean to say is no. And how could it be? Question, could hackers use this system to make a big list of everybody who has had the disease? Answer, this would be very difficult, but not impossible. So answer, yes. Yes, hackers could use this to make lists of people. And it gets technical here. They link to the cryptography spec, laying out these 3 levels of keys. And if you want to get down into that, come check out this article on The Verge. But I think it's also interesting. They ask, could someone use this to figure out who I've been in contact with? Answer, this would be significantly more difficult. So really, again, answer is yes. Yes, they could. They will be trying. Final question The Verge asks, is this just a surveillance system in disguise? Answer, this is a tricky question. In a sense, contact tracing is surveillance. So let's remember what Edward Snowden said. Do you truly believe that when the first wave, second wave, 16th wave of coronavirus is a long forgotten memory, these capabilities will not be kept? That these data sets will not be kept? What is being built is the architecture of oppression. Let's go back to the article. Public health work is full of medical surveillance simply because it's the only way to find infected people who aren't sick enough to go to a doctor. The hope is that, given the catastrophic damage already done by the pandemic, people will be willing to accept this level of surveillance as a temporary measure to stem further spread of the virus. A better question is whether the system is conducting surveillance in a fair or helpful way. It matters a lot that the system is voluntary, and it matters a lot that it doesn't share any more data than it needs to. Still, all we have right now is the protocol, and it remains to be seen whether governments will try to implement this idea in a more invasive or overbearing way. Let's back up. Temporary. People will be willing to accept this level of surveillance as a temporary measure to stem further spread of the virus. But let us remember what Edward Snowden, fantastic whistleblower, points out, that whatever's being built right now is not just going to be tossed away. So we've got to look at these technologies very closely. And The Verge finishes. As the protocol gets implemented in specific apps, there will be a lot of important decisions about how it gets used and how much data gets collected outside of it. Governments will be making those decisions, and they may make them badly. Or worse, they may not make them at all. So even if you're excited about what Apple and Google have laid out here, they can only throw the ball. And there's a lot riding on what governments do after they catch it. So again, so many moving pieces, giant tech companies working in conjunction with overloaded state health agencies. It just seems like a recipe for disaster. And there's one more article here that a friend of mine sent to me, and it's from Vox from Friday the 10th, called I've read the plans to reopen the economy. They're scary. And yes, things do get quite scary here. Here is what scares me. And this is another article worth checking out, but I'm just going to look right here. Center for American Progress and Harvard have both put out plans that is talked about at the very top here. Center for American Progress and Camp Harvard plans both foresee a digital pandemic surveillance state in which virtually every American downloads an app to their phone that geo-tracks their movements. So if they come into contact with anyone who later is found to have COVID-19, they can be alerted and a period of social quarantine can begin. So that is just like what The Verge is talking about with the Google-Apple partnership. But here, we talk about taking it a step further. Similarly, people would scan QR codes when boarding mass transit or entering other high-risk public areas. And GPS tracking could be used to enforce quarantine on those who test positive with the disease, as is being done in Taiwan. So while the previous article is not suggesting any use of GPS, they're just Bluetooth pinging the people in the phones that you would be around. Here, these plans do see the use of GPS to actually restrict people's access from certain areas. And in addition, having to scan QR codes to get to mass transit or other places. Now, this is a huge concern of mine in that it is a dangerous place where we could be further separating the underclass from our society, for lack of a better term. People who are without reliable internet access, who don't own smartphones, who either are living off the grid because they just want to be a little more separate from society, or more likely they have been cast out from society and they just can't afford, for whatever reason, to participate in the whole rat race and having their smartphones helping lead them everywhere. So now you're talking about actually keeping these people out of places, including public transport, like public places, keeping them out because they don't have the proper device with the proper QR code to prove that they're healthy. We can't give up these liberties in the short term for health concerns because they will not be restored if we start allowing government checkpoints in public places using QR codes on our smartphones. That is the slipperiest of slopes. It will not go away. It will become part of our everyday life. And that is where the overbearing from government and from these tech companies could come well into play. So I really, really don't want to see that happen. Meanwhile, there has been some polling done, and 70% of Republicans and 46% of Democrats strongly oppose using cell phone data to enforce quarantine orders. That's it. Only 46% of Democrats strongly oppose Big Brother enforcing quarantine. Well, I guess they're ready to roll over. I don't know. That seems really low to me. 70% of Republicans, that's more in line with what I think the general population would be strongly opposing. But I guess people are already used to giving up all that location data, all this information on their phones already. And when put in the context of helping to tamper down this public health scare and keep people breathing, then people are going to be willing to give away these rights. And I really hope that we don't give up too much, because Edward Snowden said it. Once we give this up, it's not going to come back. So I'm going to check out the whole Snowden interview. You should check out the whole Snowden interview. I am going to wrap it up here because I don't want to ramble. Yeah. So that's all I want to cover for right now. There's plenty to go through there. If you're interested, all the links will be down below in the description. Please, while you're there, like my video, give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this. Give me a thumbs down if you didn't. Thanks for sticking around. Leave a comment. Let me know what you're thinking about all this. And of course, always share any more articles or information that you've got on this subject. And subscribe to my channel if you want to find more of these kinds of videos. I think the quality is improving. You get to see my screen now. Wait, yeah, now you get to see my screen. And now you get to see me. And now you get to see my screen and me. And now you get to see me. Hey, I'm Justin. I'm just in it for the justice.